just the name of our show.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Large... Oh, there it is. The audio's working tonight. Yay! Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Large Glass. I'm Todd.
I'm Terri.
And this is our weekly stream where we bring you a new artist or art-related theme to talk about. How's it going? It's nice to see all of you. Yeah. For a second there... Hi, Mom. Mom's always the first one here.
She is.
For a second there, I thought we had no audio, which happened to us last week, and we haven't seen that happen in a long time. There's Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Good to see you, Ben.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. What's going on? What's new?
A lot. This has been a busy week. Lots of news in the art world, all kinds of stuff.
A lot of news. A lot of kids going back to college and going back to school.
Going back to school.
So a lot going on in that regard. There's John and Jess Park. How's it going? Nice to see you both. So that's been busy.
Yeah.
Then that storm. The East
hurricane.
Coast got whaled by Henri.
Yeah.
Which
it actually wasn't as bad as I was thinking it was going to be.
I think it was a lot worse for people up. Plus, then there was flooding in Tennessee. Like 17 inches of rain in Tennessee. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. There's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, Dave and Pumpkin Audrey.
Pumpkin Audrey. Hello.
Good to see you both as usual. 63 is here.
Yes.
Yo, what's you drinking? Well, I like that 63 just asked that.
Let's just get to it.
Because we should get to it.
We should get to it.
So where's our artist from tonight?
Well, our artist was born in Connecticut, but he has a studio in Chelsea, and he also lives on Long Island.
Right, so we're drinking New York beers.
New York beers tonight.
Because I would like to get a Connecticut beer, but...
It's hard to find a Connecticut beer.
It is. Yeah. It is. Uh-oh, Glenn's here. He's like, Henri. Yeah, Glenn had a little bit of activity, I think, with Henri. All right, so what do we got? 63 wants to know what we're drinking.
What we're drinking.
Got an ice bucket going over here. So we've had this one before. This is by Ommegang, or Ommegang. Ommegang. It's the Chardonnay. It is a green label, but because we have a green screen, we're actually kind of, losing a little bit of that here. But this is actually a really, really nice, light, refreshing beer. And you are having a Southern Tier Extra Mile.
Lower alcohol percentage.
Lower alcohol percentage.
Yes. Well, this one is 10%.
No, it's 8.7.
8.7, and then this one's like 5 point something.
Well,
I think.
It's
something like that.
Both of these are quite nice.
Yes.
You were pre-gaming a little bit, as per the usual. We always talk about the same things, don't we?
That's good.
Swamp Dog 1950. Thanks for the follow. Nice to have you. And we're talking about followers in a little while, and that's good that Swamp Dog just followed because it gets us a little bit closer to where we need to be. I like that. So if you're here and you're new to this channel and you have not followed before, please leave a follow. The closer we get to 200, the sooner we give away that beautiful Susan Stillman painting that was donated. I normally do this later, but I'll do it now. Ommegang, Ommegang, Chardonnay. So this is episode 52. We've done 52 episodes without fail. However, it's not our 1 year anniversary tonight because while there are 52 weeks in a year, our actual anniversary will fall on September 21. So our September 21st show is actually going to be kind of fun.
It is.
We're doing some really cool stuff for that. So that's still a little less than a month out, but you'll have to make sure you join us for that.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to all of you. Let us know what you're drinking in the chat. We can't wait to hear about that. I'm telling you. Ommegang Chardonnay. It's a limited edition brew.
That is very good.
That's good?
It's very celebratory, too. Yeah, this one's always good. I feel like Southern Tier, you can't go wrong except for that one cinnamon bun beer that they made one time.
We talked about that one before,
too. But that's it. The rest of them are awesome.
Wow, 5% is considered low alcohol. You know what? Weirdly, 63 these days it is.
Compared to the beers we drink, it is.
When I go looking for beers to pick up for the show, so that we're kind of getting ready for this, there's almost everything is an IPA or a double IPA, and everything is like 7 and up. So a 5 is like it's kind of a nice find.
That is a nice find.
All right, so let us know what you're drinking in the chat.
Yes.
Why don't we do a featured supporter.
Yes.
I think, we missed the featured supporter last week.
We were a little out of our ordinary lineup last week. We kind of broke the show down differently, so we missed our featured supporter last week.
It was a good show last week.
It was a good show last week. It was a neat format.
I really enjoyed doing the review of Hamlet Doblins, and Pam Glick was awesome.
Oh, she really was.
So that was a good time. Let's jump over and let's do a featured supporter. So tonight's featured supporter, I hope she's here, is Val Civilli. Val, thank you so much for everything you've done for us. We love having you here locally. We think you're an awesome force in the arts around here. Mm-hmm. We love what you do, and we've really appreciated getting to know you better over the last year. I mean, I've known you for a long time, but only in the outer perimeter of the circle. So it's awesome to know you. We love to have you along. Thank you. We appreciate that. All right.
All right.
That covers that ground.
That does.
We didn't miss it.
We didn't.
All right, you want to do birthdays?
We can do birthdays. Birthdays is one of my...
Wait, we do news first.
Most fun parts of the show, but we can do the news first. The news is depressing this week.
Why don't we do birthdays first?
Should we depress ourselves first and then cheer ourselves up afterwards?
All right, a vote from the chat. You want the good news first or the bad news? The good news is birthdays. The bad news is the
death days.
The news.
Lots of deaths.
So,
which is unfortunate.
What do you prefer to have first?
Yeah. There was a death today that Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones passed away, which is kind of sad. So I love the Rolling Stones. I know he was sick for a while because they canceled some shows.
Yeah, they did.
But that news just released shortly. So
we got 3 votes for bad, and Glenn votes for good.
Well, because if you put the good first and then you have like bummer news, it
sets the tone.
It sets the tone. So let's do the news first.
Okay, we'll do the news first.
Okay.
All right, here comes my fun little interlude.
Spiel.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. All right, so let's do the news. So first of all of you have heard about Chuck Close. I'm certain all of you have heard about Chuck Close. So Chuck Close passed away. I actually have to figure out where the heck I put all my slides on Mr. Chuck Close, because we've got a few good ones here to look at, and I don't want to miss that, and somehow I have a feeling I'm going to. So what happened to Chuck Close's slides? Please hold while we find Mr. Close. They appear to be right here.
There they are.
Good. All right, so Chuck Close, who makes hyper-realistic paintings on a monumental scale, we lost him this week. There was some controversy surrounding him in the news the last few years, but I'm not going to necessarily dwell on that. I will say Chuck was very active on the New York gallery scene, not from the showing standpoint, which obviously he did, but I can't tell you how many times I went to shows and Chuck Close was there. Wow. And you could walk up and talk to him, and he was approachable. So I appreciated that. He was 81 years old. He's most known for some of his, really hyper-realistic large-scale pieces. After a condition with his spine put him in a wheelchair, another thing he was known for was a monumental scale easel that was built for him in his studio that actually would allow the painting to drop down into the floor, and he was able to paint in that same scale, even though he was not as mobile as he once was. So for you, Chuck Close, rest in peace. We're sorry to lose you. The next one, we've got 3 deaths tonight. 3.
We do.
And I'm kind of bummed about that. But the next one we have is Mr. Peter Williams. Peter Williams was a painter. He used bold colors, talked a lot about his own personal experience as a black male in the United States, never pulled any punches. He was not afraid to tell it like it is. He was only 69 years old, unfortunately. And somebody once described him as one of the forefathers of Afro-Surrealism. One of his friends, Aleem Smith, who's a fellow artist. And so Peter Williams missed this guy too, but died a little bit too young, or a lot too young.
69 is pretty young.
69 is young.
Yeah.
And if that's young, then the next one is way too young. But Carrie Upson, sculptor, born in 1972, her work kind of evoked this eerie sense of like absence, kind of in the when there was an obvious presence in the work. And so she was in the Venice Biennale in 2019. She's shown internationally on a number of other levels. Very well-known sculptor. She passed away this week also at the age of 49, which is really unfortunate. And so, that's, really kind of a bummer. So I'm kind of glad that we're putting this in the beginning. We'll get to some birthdays after this, and maybe it'll feel a little bit.
Yeah, it was a real bummer of a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Carrie Upson, is that spelling right? It's not Carrie like you have it. It's Carrie the way. Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. It's this way because I've got it right here. Carrie Upson. So I'm forgetting my fun little lower thirds there, but that's Carrie Upson.
She was very ill. I think she was battling cancer.
She was battling cancer.
Of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. All right. So we will miss all of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So should we do some birthdays?
Let's do some birthdays.
All right.
Yes. All right. So coming up, it's somebody's birthday today, but there weren't any artist birthdays that I came across that were today. But the first one that we have is Dorothea Tanning. Yep, I was waiting for the lower third.
You want the lower third to pop in?
Yes. So she's an American printmaker, sculptor, painter. She was also a writer, poet. She was known for her surreal images, and she was married to Max Ernst as well. So happy birthday.
She was one of the, when you talk about female surrealists in the surrealist movement, she's one of the ones that typically comes up. There's a couple of others, but she's one of the few, and there were many, many more than the few that are typically talked about. And so, she did manage to squeak into the light, which, definitely wasn't the way it should have been. There should have been more, but she was there.
Yep. So she was August 25th, 1910.
Glenn says everyone was married to Max Ernst.
Well, I am reading that book by Peggy Guggenheim, and she talks about him quite a bit in there too, Art Addict. So she had some stuff with Max Ernst. So this is George Stubbs, August 25th, 1724, just a little bit older than our last artist. He was an English painter. He painted a lot of horses. And when I look at him, I think of The Sopranos. That's a weird segue.
Is it because he looks like one of the Sopranos?
There was that one episode with Pyomai. And then he had, Tony Soprano had his portrait painted with Pyomai in the same style that George Stubbs would have painted in. So every time I see a George
specifically
Stubbs,
George Stubbs, it was named?
It's very no. It's just that kind of feel to it. Every time I see his paintings, I think of The Sopranos, which anyway is not, but he was an English painter, horses, animals. He was self-trained too. Very romantic painter. So happy birthday!
Happy birthday, George.
Yep.
What do we got?
We have
Mr. Hale Woodruff.
Mr. Hale Woodruff. He was born on August 26th, 1900. He was known for his murals and his paintings, mostly big Harlem Renaissance painter. So happy birthday to him.
All right, moving on.
This is Rufino Tamayo. He was born on August 26th as well. He's 1 year older than our previous artist. He was also a muralist as well, Mexican painter. He was really into figure abstraction that had some animal elements and surreal elements in them. So happy birthday to him. Okay.
Oh, yeah. This one goes without it. We don't even need a lower third for this one.
This is Man Ray. He was born on August 27th, 1890. And he was actually born in Philadelphia.
Okay. You love your Philly people.
I love my Philly people. I lived in Philadelphia. Dada, surrealism, photography. He was into fashion and portraiture, and
you're having trouble with the one I picked for this one, aren't you?
Well, I'm no. It wasn't one that I thought you would pick, though. So
I wanted to pick one that was, some of these I pick ones that are typical of the artist because I feel like if the audience doesn't know who the artist is, they should make the association. Yeah. They should say, oh, now I know who that is.
Yeah.
But with Man Ray, it's like there's so many that we could pick that are so obvious. So I picked one that was a little bit, out of the ordinary. All right, moving on.
Moving on. So this is...
Thank you, 63. Thank you.
Good choice. This is
just go with Ong.
Dominique Ong. He was one of the painters that my father would try to copy when he was learning how to paint. He was born on August 29th, 1780, a neoclassic painter. A lot of his portraits, they really focused on finery and detail and the lace and the ribbons. And I remember when my father would paint the portraits after him, that was something that he really focused on as well.
This painting in person will bend your brain inside out. It is just, exquisite. You're not allowed to get close enough to it really to kind of spend time with it. 63 says, we all need to hit the frick, and I smell a large glass road trip coming out of that one. I would love to go hit the frick. Yes, that's cool. A great idea. Yeah. All right, we got to keep rolling here, but let's keep the frick thing in mind.
Yes, let's. So this is Alex Gross. We actually had him on our Halloween episode.
He was a Halloween episode, yep.
He was born on August 30th, 1968. He does mostly pop culture themes and cabinet cards. He usually depicts superheroes and pop culture food items like Starbucks and cell phones and stuff like that.
Glenn hates this guy.
I love him. I love him.
He might not. Glenn might not, but I
don't know. I could picture Glenn.
Mom loves him. Mom loves him.
Yeah.
He's getting some love.
He's cool.
All right, let's keep going. Okay. Another artist that we've done on this show.
Amy Sherrill. She was also born on August 30th, 1973. We know her for her portraits of everyday African Americans that she finds interest on the street.
And not so everyday. In that she did the Michelle Obama portrait.
She did do the Michelle Obama portrait. It's not something that she normally talks about right away. Sure, there's clips on it, but she really focuses on the everyday.
Which is why I picked this other painting.
I love her. The grisaille, complexions. She's fantastic.
All right, we're going to keep on going.
Oh, we're still going.
We got 2 to go. This guy and 1 more.
Oh, Jacques-Louis David. August 30th. Oh my God, August 30th has like a ton of birthdays. Wow. 1748 French neoclassicism.
The painting.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
It's okay.
That's
bad. Pretty much it. Happy birthday. Can't top that.
Thanks for just blowing me off on that one. Who's this?
Robert Crumb. I love Robert Crumb. Also born on August 30th, 1943. He's known for his illustrations, such as that comic book style. I read Genesis by him. I couldn't read. I've always wanted to read the book of Genesis.
Hold on. All right, so.
But then when I started reading the book of Genesis, I'm like, is that what's being said? And then he did the version of it, and it's verbatim. It's the King James version, word for word. And when you see it illustrated, wow, what a story.
Here's what I love most about this, okay? Terri's first encounter with R. Crumb, or her most meaningful encounter with R. Crumb, was Genesis. Mine was Fritz the Cat.
Oh, that's
They're
so
on
funny.
Opposite ends of the spectrum.
They're totally on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Crumb and Ong together? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Same day.
Well,
yes.
I feel like...
Oh, no, one day different.
This is one of the reasons why I put Fritz the Cat up there as the... Have you ever seen Fritz the Cat?
I have not seen Fritz the Cat.
Okay.
Yes.
We're gonna have to get you on that because Glenn says Genesis by Crumb is great.
It is. It's really awesome.
63 is like, yeah, Todd. Well, yeah, because that one hit me like a ton of bricks. I really had no experience. The funny thing was, I came to comics very late in life, and so I had no experience with R. Crumb as a kid. And then in high school, somebody showed me Fritz the Cat, and I was just like, whoa. This is good. This is really good.
I loved Genesis.
We're dating ourselves. Yeah, we are totally dating ourselves. All right. Anyway, that is enough for birthdays.
That's enough for birthdays.
We got to get to our artist, but we do have one more matter of business, and it's business, right? So we are constantly looking for support for our show because, number one, we love doing this, and we're going to continue to do this. We would love to have the support system that we need to make this even deeper, even better. And so we're always asking for that, and we're always asking for support for our show. One way you can support our show is by telling your friends to come here and watch it. If you're watching right now and you have not followed, please give a follow. Following and subscribing on Twitch are two different things. So if you've hit the subscribe button like you would do on YouTube and you saw that it involves paying, no. Subscribing does involve paying, but you can follow, and following is free, and that actually helps to support our channel by giving us more followers. So, however, paying is nice, right? And you know, it's good to support this system. What we do on this show is we tend to use Patreon. That tends to be our method of support that we enjoy, and we're creating exclusive content for the Patreon community. So Friday, September 3rd, 8 p.m. for patrons only, people that support us through Patreon only. We're going to be having a special broadcast. It's a private broadcast. All the patrons that are on that show will actually be on a Zoom meeting with us on the broadcast. We're going to be talking about what makes a work of art bad. We're going to have Glenn, I hate username 67, right there in the chat. Glenn Lavertu will be joining us as a guest speaker and sort of propelling that conversation along. So we're really excited about that. So jump over to patreon.com/thelargeglass, separated by underscores, and sign up. We would love that. And I think if you sign up, you get a big announcement right here in the middle of the Twitch window that says you joined. And we'll be like, oh my God, thank you so much.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
That's enough of that. All right. So anyway, do what you can. We appreciate it. And let's get back to introducing tonight's artist.
Yes.
Because I'm excited.
Yes. So
You're usually the one who does the intros.
We can.
So
I can. I feel like all the best artists, my line starts off with, I don't know where to start, because this artist is phenomenal. His portfolio and work span beyond my lifetime, about 45 years from 1960s, late 60s, all the way until now. I love how he keeps revisiting themes, and we're going to see that tonight. Tonight, we're talking about Allan Wexler.
You're talking about Allan Wexler. And the first thing, before I jump over to that screen where we begin to show his work, I want to talk about Allan Wexler and his book. Okay, so Allan Wexler has a book that came out in 2017. It's called Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. And I'm going to tell you what. I had one other book by Allan Wexler that I still have it. It's called Custom Built. It's a fantastic book. It's very hard to get your hands on, and I cherish that book because of the images in it. This book is incredible. It is absolutely something that you want to have on your shelf. We are not sponsored by Allan Wexler tonight. We're talking about this because we love it. And I'm telling you right now, this is a gorgeous book, chock full of drawings, explanations, essays, iterations. It's exquisite. So go get this. I can't tell you how worth it it'll be. If you go get it and you don't love it, I'll come buy it off you.
Wow.
I'll come buy it off you.
Yeah.
Get out the checkbook.
Okay.
But
well, why? Because they're going to love it.
Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. Get it.
Yeah,
all right.
It's awesome.
So let's jump over to...
let's jump into him. And
Yeah.
can I just say, he was born on March 30th, 1949. I want to say that because that's the day before my birthday. So he is right in alignment with me. I also want to point out that we did the show on March 30th birthdays, if you remember. Do you remember the day that we did the 2 birthdays with Van Gogh? And Goya?
And Goya, yeah.
He was born on the same day.
He was born on the same day as Van Gogh and Goya?
We did a show on March 30th birthday, so isn't that wild?
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, just
so he's got that connection. Not that the work has...
I don't know. It would have been interesting if we looked at his work in conjunction with them as well, but I know that that's kind of a stretch, but it was just a fun project that we did. So Mr. Wexler, he has a couple of degrees. He has a BFA in 1971, and he also has a bachelor's in architecture from 1972, both from RISD. He also has a Master of Architecture from Pratt. He moved to New York City in 1973, and he's pretty much maintained a studio in Chelsea. He also lives in Long Island right now, and he has a studio there as well. he's shown internationally, nationally. He's been all over the place. He's collected by many museums and galleries. His studio practice is a blend of many disciplines, which we're going to get into in just a little bit. I do want to say one thing I love looking at artists is where that spark first originated in them and what inspired them. And I found one really good video that I was kind of honing in on. I'll give you the name of that in a little bit because it is a good watch. It's 45 minutes, and I felt like every other line, if not every line that he said, was a quotable passage. So it was a real pleasure watching that. But he was talking about his earlier inspirations. It came from his father, his grandfathers. They were all makers and artists of some sort. His dad was a photographer. One of his grandfathers was a sign painter, and another grandfather was a tailor. So he kind of watched them, and that's kind of how the spark first originated.
Yeah, and I just want to point out a couple things in the comments. First of all, I didn't realize that Shirley is here. I see her in the comments. I didn't recognize her. Hi, Shirley. Nice to see you. Glenn wants to know if he knows that we're doing this episode on him. And he does. Yes. And he might even be here right now. I'm not sure watching. But Allan, if you're here, definitely say hi in the chat. Or you can just watch.
Just kind of passively
no
watch
pressure.
And not say anything. No
it's
worries.
a lot of pressure on us.
Yes, because when someone's watching, we're like, oh God, I hope I can do him the justice that he deserves.
Well, one thing we talked about too is maybe asking Allan to be on the show like we've done with other artists in the past. And, it's a very busy time of year for artists that are also teachers because the semester's starting up and it's really lumping something on somebody like that right now is really not fair. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't ask, but maybe a future show. We'll see. I first met Allan when he came to speak at RISD, and I was a graduate student there in sculpture, and he completely changed my life. I mean, it was one of the most, we had tons of guest speakers come to RISD in the 2 years that I was there. And, there were times when I loved an artist's work, and then I would see that artist speak. These artists will remain unnamed. I would see that artist speak, and I walked away completely disenchanted, really actually kind of let down, right? Allan Wexler came. I had not seen Allan's work before, and I felt like that I walked out of there thinking, this is the reason I'm here, right? Because I felt such a kinship with Allan's sensibilities, his making, his sort of this kind of iterative practice of making a thing, and continuing to look back on the previous thing. Because that's kind of how I worked. I was all about repetition and sort of this kind of, even we'll get to these pieces, and it's not about me. But anyway, I felt a kinship with Allan. I'll stop talking from there. And it was not long after that I picked up that first catalog, and I still to this day go to that catalog for inspiration when I'm feeling like I need a push, right? So there's a lot about Allan's process that I feel is really where I'm going to come from in this show. So, and if you look at his work, his work spans, so Allan is both, he's an architect and an artist. And he actually says about himself, I call myself an artist trapped in an architect's body, or an architect trapped in an artist's body. And he goes back and forth between there. And as you look at his work, you're going to see the connections to architecture for sure. And then you're going to also sort of sense maybe the art vein in all of this is stronger, right? That the artist is at the top of that list, borrowing the language from maybe architecture. And you see, and I'm not going to focus on any of these just yet. I'm pulling some images up so you can see them. But as you sort of look through a quick scan of some of the things he does, you can see the performative, you can see the sculptural, you can see the architectural, you can see the craft, you can see the furniture. And all of these languages from within all of those different genres come together in a way that breaks out of the functional norms associated with those things and pushes them into this other kind of experimentation within the realms of the absurd, within the realms of iteration, within the realms of performance, and they take on a new meaning. They now have a new life. So I think we should start with one of his
let's
earliest
go ahead.
pieces on his website. And by the way, one thing you're going to want to do at some point is you're going to want to head over to his website after the show. There's no way we have time
For
to show all of it,
pieces.
right? But allanwexlerstudio.com is someplace you can go, look at his work, and you can go all the way to the bottom of the page and begin at the beginning.
His earliest. The one thing I do love about his website is that there is a chronology to it. And if you start at the bottom, you work your way up, and you can see the themes rise and be revisited, and then new themes come in, a new structure, a new form. So it's really a beautiful website. I spent many hours on it this weekend.
One thing he's taught me in looking at that website is, I'll often struggle with a piece of sculpture or a series, a drawing series, and I'll put it away and I'll say, I'm done with that. And then 5 or 10 years later, I'll say to myself, or I'll find it in a flat file and I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I gave up on that. But now all of a sudden the interest is there again. And so I'm realizing through Allan's website and the chronology that, it's really important to revisit those things and resurrect them and kind of like, begin to work them again. What are we looking at?
Well, can I just point out we have a couple of comments going on?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Glenn says he was one of the best visiting artists we had. 100% agree. He was at the top of the list for sure. Followed maybe closely by James Terrell. Right? James Terrell. And I'll ask you, who was at the bottom of that? Who was at the?
No, we're not going to answer that.
Oh, wait a minute. No, and also Ann Hamilton. Ann Hamilton was it was up there. Wexler comes above Ann Hamilton. I loved Ann Hamilton, but Allan was better.
Yes, and Sculpture is here.
Sculpture is here. Allan makes the utilitarian and functional have poetic outcomes. Okay, folks, that was the end of the show. That's perfect.
That is perfect.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. It's exactly right.
Yes.
So you want to talk about our what we're looking at here?
Sure. This is one of the first pieces that he's published on his website. I'm sure he's done pieces prior to, but this is one of his most notable pieces. I think it's a great way to start because the topics of chair, form, function, beauty, all of that is something that he does revisit throughout. This is called Chair in Space from 1968. So we're going to start there.
Well, yeah. And, if you just take a look at this for a second and we just sort of talk out loud about what we see, let's count them out. It's 3, 6, 9, 10, 11.
Actually, he did a tray of 80 35mm slides, and I'm getting this directly from his website.
Okay.
That can be arranged in many different ways. So you can make many different dialogues with them. And even when I'm looking at it from side to side and reading it almost like a narrative as you would in a book, it's interesting because they do take on an animation.
Yes.
Where they kind of come and go. And he mentions flyovers. It actually does that with your own eyes as you kind of go through it.
Because you can almost imagine yourself, okay, so let's just talk basically about what a chair is. A chair is a functional object that we use for seating, but it's got so much more to it. And Allan's going to show us how much more it really has. But one of the things I find interesting for an architect and a chair is a chair has a very specific, most of the time, has a very specific scale associated with it. And that scale can help to identify and illustrate the scale of an architectural space. So oftentimes, let's say you wanted to either build a model or photograph the interior of an architectural space, and you did not want to include figures.
That's true.
Which can be awkward.
Yes.
A chair will function as the stand-in for a figure because it has the scale that allows you to recognize how big a space is. So in this piece, if we're thinking about the chair either as stand-in for a person or scale of a person, and we look through the individual pieces in this drawing, we can imagine ourselves moving around that. And so just through a drawing, my body's relationship with this chair in all of its dimensionality is established. Bam. Rather than a single view, I've got all the views. I'm over it. I'm around it.
I'm on this side. I'm on that side.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
63 says, very Kossuth, but better. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. Joseph Kossuth is a good reference here. I do not have a Joseph Kossuth image to pull up, however. So I might be able to pull that up in a little bit because I think I know which a good reference in that regard. So if we think about this as an early work and him just considering all the viewpoints of the chair, it's not surprising that we soon wind up, or later, like this was in 1968. From 2007 until 2009, let's just jump ahead for a second.
Yes.
He does an entire series of chairs that he alters, that he moves through iterations on. And some of them might be obvious, and some of them will be less obvious. So he's got this one. Now this one is called, I believe this one is called Self or Selfish.
I'm going to try to pull that one up.
Yeah, it's hiding in there somewhere, but I'll just, while you're finding it, I'll talk about it. I think it's right there. So in this one, you notice that the chair back, the left side of the chair back has been thinned out. A piece has been cut out of that and extracted. And then if you notice underneath the legs of the chair, there are some shims. And those shims were cut from that piece that was taken out. So what did it do? Well, it cut a piece off of itself and it propped itself up. And it kind of has this kind of, it's serving itself, right? But then we can go a little bit further, and this one is called Selfless, right? So the chair now that had the piece cut out of it has given its shims to the chair next door. Now these are subtle little variations on content. Yes, the titles are interesting. What the chairs are doing to each other in regards to the titles are interesting. But there's also an iteration starting. Now this is a standard IKEA chair that he uses over and over and over again. He takes the same chair from IKEA and does the same, not the same, but he uses it for his iterative practice. And then I think there was another variation on that. You can see here how the legs have been transformed, right? And we can even keep going. I wish I had put this in better order, so I'm kind of hating myself right now for having to scroll through all of this. But let's just go back for a second and go to, where are you? I've got that one up there now. This one. So in this one's really hard to see, but here are two more of the same chair. And I think, is this called Exchange?
This is called Exchange.
Exchange. If you look in the seat, the front left corner of the seat has been cut out all the way down the leg, and they've been swapped. So there are these real subtle interplays that he's creating between these objects. And what I love about this is they're simple, everyday objects that he is performing simple acts of change on.
Yeah, well, he's looking at the relationships among them. He explores relationships quite a bit between objects and our relationship with them.
Yeah. And I mean, and here's a perfect example. Two identical chairs, but the patina in the finish is evidently different when you sort of graft one into the other, which I kind of love. Now, some of the transformations become quite startling, and I really want to put up this. Can I put up this one?
You can put up that one.
I'm going to put up the
This
first.
is...
I want to do. Hold on, I don't have this in order. Where is?
Yeah, these chairs are all over the place.
Yeah. Okay. I
Ooh, I love this one. Look at this one. Oh.
That's the one I'm looking for.
That one's burnt chair, charcoal.
We're looking for the
detail.
charcoal burnt chair. I know it's here.
There it is.
All right. So he takes one of these chairs and he burns it.
That's gorgeous.
And the charcoal falls off the chair, right? And these chairs are, they're actually not bad chairs. I mean, IKEA chairs are inexpensive chairs. They're not the type.
They're real wood. They're not particle board,
They're
right?
real wood.
There you go.
They're not fine craft, but they do serve a good utilitarian purpose, which I like. And in this case, he burns this chair. He takes the charcoal from the burning of the chair, and he draws a perfect isometric model or drawing or rendering of that chair with the charcoal from the burned chair itself, which is a really interesting conceptual exercise.
And especially when you're thinking of he's drawing on paper, and paper is another form of wood.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's this beautiful full circle relationship.
Yeah, and the relationship between the two sitting there is quite nice. I love even the way the cast shadow sort of throws itself up on its newborn kind of self, right?
Right.
Let's see, what else do we have? So there's the Exchange one. There's this really interesting one where he starts to deal with this process of stain, right? Now, I'm fairly certain, I don't know the exact process behind this one. A plan oblique, yes. I missed that, Jim. I missed that.
When you're saying you don't understand the process, do you think it's leaching upwards? Do you
That's
think
what
it's
I-
absorbing some of the stain?
No, there's no way. I mean, I think it's implied here that the stain is literally wicking
the
up
roots.
into the wood.
Uh-huh.
God, if it were, that would be...
That would be quite interesting. There's usually a finish on those types of chairs. I don't know what the finish is. It's hard to tell when you're not in front of
Well, he gets in close,
object.
and to me it looks pretty obvious that this has sort of been brushed
on.
He applied it above, and then, wait, so 63 says nope, he applied it above.
Okay.
Yeah, you can kind of see here where it's been applied. I do like the implication that there's kind of like it's been planted into this, and then you wind up with, this chair in the end that sort of perfectly matches the shirt that's draped over it.
Yes.
But here's one that I'm absolutely in love with. It's really hard to see at first what's going on here, so I'll let you look at it for a little bit. But John Park says there may be a meta layer here. So many iconic chair designs were created by architects. He takes that expectation in a wholly different direction. Really well put, right? Because he, as an architect, right, is taking a chair that is mass produced and, really, I mean, I'm not going to say an uninteresting chair, but it's really the absolute basic essence of chair, right? He's not treating, this chair hasn't been treated like, like a, like an Eames chair might be, where, you're thinking about the contours of the body. It wasn't treated like a Harry Bertoia chair, where, there's a certain element of flair and beauty in it, as well as that kind of support. I say Harry Bertoia chair because there happens. Nice. Chairs joined at the table. Exactly. The table legs are attached to the corners of the chairs.
That left upper corner carries
Left upper
through.
corner. It's gorgeous.
It is. It also makes a statement on you can only sit at this table a certain way.
Yeah.
Like you can't enter from one side. You have to enter from this side to make it work.
And there's sort of a cooperative element to that as well, right? And not necessarily one person could sit at this table, but he has other pieces in his collection, in his work, that need that kind of they're either separating you or they're forcing a certain kind of cooperation, which I like. Let's take a look at the expanding chair. I like this one. I think this one kind of has a really interesting way of, just making these subtle adjustments. I wonder how stable this thing is with all of those attachments.
Yes.
And there's a few close-ups on this that we can look at, where this kind of sliding, locking mechanism is put into play.
But he does that with very solid structures that normally aren't malleable, like when we see the wooden shoes, for example. And, when you think of something like that, I mean, it's like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. There's not much you can do, but he finds ways to articulate
I like that.
change when it's really impossible sometimes. So he tries to work with objects in certain ways.
And I love that you're saying that, because if you think about the notion that each one of these iterations is sort of a customization to each of these chairs, this one allows a kind of malleable, to use your word, a malleable customization, right? Which is actually really quite cool. Let's keep looking down this list. I love the love seat. What I love about the love seat is the two chairs actually join in almost a seamless way. So they share a leg, right? And one of the stringers on the bottom, rung or stringers, I can't remember if I think that's a rung, is almost continuous, right? Which is really quite beautiful. So let's keep going, because look.
There's numerous.
There's so many of these chairs.
Again, you have to go to his website, allanwexlerstudio.com. You're going to be blown away by his portfolio. We're not going to touch on everything tonight. Even before the show, when we were starting to fine-tune everything, we kept saying, oh, did you put this one in? And he's like, no, I can't put that one in. If we put everything in, we're going to be here for like 6 months talking about his work. So
right. And 63 is asking, so do you know his conceptual reason for using the chair as a starting point? And in some ways we do, and in some we don't. He does talk often about being interested in a lot of very mundane and basic everyday human activities.
Well, there's a couple of themes that he's interested in. Ritual, ceremony, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Things that, like you said, that we probably take for granted. He's looking at them curiously.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't just let that be. He really dives deep into what that all means.
Right. You know, and if you think about some of the ingenuity around not only chair design and the way chairs are utilized, you know, because, you know, and I'm going to get to this guy in a second. I'm going to talk a little bit. I don't want to jump the gun here. Like, for example, the Shakers, for example, used to put pegs on the walls of their houses to hang the chairs up on because they wanted to get the chairs up and out of the way. Chairs have a life in a home that I think is often under-recognized. And Allan really brings that under-recognition to life in these by just imbuing them with enough information that sets them apart. He lofts them up out of the ordinary. And I think that's what sort of really is astonishing to me, is he takes the ordinary and he rips it out of that realm. Rips it out, it seems a little bit aggressive. Take a look at this chair. This is another one in that series. And the chair basically was, you know, it's the same IKEA chair, taken apart and altered. Now, this chair made me realize that there's a very, very specific influence going on in all of this. And it's an influence that I was inspired by for a very long time. And that's the architect and designer Gerrit Rietveld. So everybody that's ever been to MoMA knows Gerrit Rietveld because of this chair, right? The red-blue chair. Now, if you look at some of the joinery in this chair, specifically on the black rungs at the front of the chair down below, they cross at 3 points. They're basically an X, Y, and a Z axes that not only cross, but overlap slightly. And if we go back to Allan's chair for a second, it does sort of thwart that XYZ cross to a degree. However, you cannot ignore the red ends that are on this chair and how there is definitely a likeness to the red-blue chair. So I started thinking about this a little bit more, and I started thinking about Allan's sense of craft, Allan's sense of simplistic joinery, the way in which he makes connections, the approaches to his craft very much reflect Rietveld's signature joint. So Rietveld developed this joint in the way that he attaches those things. Those three, that XYZ axis and the way they come together is not done just by simply screwing and gluing, as you know, it's a term involved in woodworking. It's not that at all. There's absolutely a genius level of craft to this. And I actually got to try it out when I made my own version of the red-blue chair, which I did. It was immaculate. Someone stole it. So I no longer have it, and I miss it dearly. But take a look at this image for a second. Now, the two pins, there are 3 pins here. You can kind of see a cutaway, and you're seeing an X-ray vision of the actual joint. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's really about Allan, not about Gerrit Rietveld. But you got 3 pins here. 2 of them are horizontal, and they're at 45s just because of the nature of the drawing. Those 2 pins are inserted and glued first. So what happens is the horizontal pins go in, and the 2 horizontal legs slide into the vertical leg. The hole for the vertical pin comes in from the bottom, and that is the last one to go in. And you glue that and slide that up and in, and once you do, those 3 elements are locked. And they're not only locked, but they're locked square, right? So it's, when you put that last pin in and everything locks together, it is just like, it's brilliant. And it reminds me very much of Allan's work, especially when we start to see these connections. Now, in his book, Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design, there's a whole story in here from Allan about how he altered the staircase that went downstairs to his studio and his love of Rietveld. And there's actually red and blue. He called the staircase when he got done, I don't have it bookmarked, but he called the staircase red and blue stair, like red and blue chair. And so the connection to Rietveld is definitely there. Any architect with a good sensibility towards craft and ingenuity cannot not love this guy. And I'm going to talk more about this chair later.
I am curious because 63 had asked, the conceptual reason for using the chair as a starting point. I was just wondering if there was anything else to add to that before, because I know that we have some ideas, but maybe you know something as well. There's a couple more comments going on.
I like Scultori says, your selection of pieces makes me think of analytical cubism, taking a basic subject matter and finding ways to reinvent how we compose with it. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Scultori, because I've got a piece I think we should show. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Hold on, I'm going to scroll this.
Oh, okay.
But that's going to jump us way out.
That's going to jump us way. Can we stick on
Scultori,
the chair?
I've got a piece that's going to kind of come back to what you're saying there.
I'm probably going to forget it. But
Dave says, I love that drawing. What a great combination of engineering and art. Yeah, exactly. And I love that space that, when we look at the space Allan occupies, that kind of dips into his experience in architecture and pulls that sensibility over into the art world. It's like, it's such an exciting space for me, both aesthetically and just thinking about the making. One or two more quick chairs.
I did want to say something too, because I don't know if we have slides on this, but one thing that Allan does as well is he does these scaffolds and supports for different things. And when you look at the chair, it's also a scaffold support for things.
That's a great point.
Reverence that we would ordinarily take for granted. He did the one piece on the Seder in which he had the Seder supper and each dish was elevated on a scaffold, and that comes to mind.
And he mentions when he talks about scaffolding, that scaffolding, so there's a couple things in here. So there's the Seder piece where each dish is elevated, like you said, by this scaffold. I have that in here somewhere. I just have to, I've got probably 100 slides in here to go through. But he talks about scaffolding and how it monumentalizes and defines, number one. So think about that for a minute. A scaffolding holds up or surrounds. I love to see buildings under construction that have scaffolding around them. Because somehow when he says it defines, that's absolutely true, right? Another thing he mentions that scaffolding also brings to mind the hard construction work Jews did as slaves in Egypt, for sure. Right, absolutely, and I think that it's a testament to a number of things: the monumentalization of a thing, and then of course this other reference to the historical culture.
There's that too, but there's so many things that go along with the context of scaffolding because it's supportive, it's to improve things. Sometimes it's its own structure. Look at the Eiffel Tower. That's this gorgeous monumental piece that everybody knows. So when you think of scaffolding, so it encapsulates, and a lot of his works deal with encapsulation and protecting and things like that as well. So it's a neat thread.
So there's some 63 says, you're not going to Solowitz sculptures, are you? Actually, 63, not specifically.
Sort of.
But there is a piece that Wexler does that directly references Lewitt, and I think it's actually really important to look at. And that's actually, I'm really glad you said that because this is the perfect segue. But before I do that, I need to mention Boojaz's comment of, love will tear us apart.
Oh.
Because that could have been an alternative title to this particular chair. 63 is like, fine. No, 63, I think you're going to like this one. This one. So can you pull that up on your site just so you have that ready to go?
Which one are we going towards?
We're going towards, oh my God, this list.
Was it the one that you just had up a few moments ago?
No, it's this one.
Oh, okay, let me get there.
Okay.
Hold on.
So before you see a 8-foot by 8-foot cube room. Now, before Allan actually went to work on this piece, he told the gallery the handlers, the workers in the gallery, the construction workers, he gave them a simple set of instructions. Now that's very Lewitt in and of itself, right? Building pieces of art from instruction sheets. But he said basically, build me an 8-foot by 8-foot room. The studs need to be 16 inches on center, and you're only to sheetrock the interior. The screws will be placed 8 inches apart and leave the screw heads exposed, right? Now this is illuminated from inside. And when he got there, that was when it became time for him to actually for Allan to actually complete the piece, okay? So what he did is, knowing that the screw heads were exposed and knowing that drywall screws utilize a Phillips head, which is a cross, essentially, and here's a picture of one right here, Allan was able to notice that all the screw heads are obviously going to be in random directions. And so what he did, which I love just as a simple exercise in recognizing the mundane and the ordinary inside of a piece of architecture and expanding that, taking that out from its ordinary, non-noticeable existence, and he started to draw the lines to continue them, right? And so you can see how this screw head and the two lines that intersected continue out into space. And then we can go further, right? Now with those screw heads 8 inches apart in a room that's got studs 16 inches on center across 64 square feet, or I'm not gonna do the math right now, but it's 64 square feet per wall times, it's a large space, right? And so look at how this begins to sort of reveal a very, very simplistic, and this goes back to what Scultore said earlier about how his works take or realize a poetic result. This is poetry. This is poetry from something that nobody would ever really pay attention to otherwise. And so it begins to sort of materialize, and it drastically alters the space. Now there's a piece we haven't looked at yet where Allan says that he wants to become architecture. Into one piece that he's got in his studio, right? And he realized that when he stepped into this space, the lines almost appeared to intersect him, to move through him, right? Because you're completely surrounded by him. It's almost like thread has been stretched across all of this.
That's exactly what it seems like.
It seems like it.
Lifts off the two-dimensional surface and becomes part of a three-dimensional, and beyond that, it's like a matrix kind of thing.
Exactly. It's almost as if you would almost stop for a second before stepping in, because it feels like the webbing is physical.
You feel like you're going to get caught in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what he did was he took a picture of himself inside of this space, and then using Photoshop, he extended the lines as if they were crossing him. And this is another attempt to become the architecture, which I love, right? So, 63 says, very cool. Guy's got some thought chops. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Thought chops.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So what does this do? I mean, number one, there's another sort of theme that you see running through Allan's work, and that he talks about pixelization and this sort of fragmentation. And I see that here. Right? Because now all of a sudden his space is being chopped into all these new geometric forms that were taken from a cube. Right? So it's almost like this distillation or this deconstruction of other geometries that inadvertently wound up in the space because of the way the screw heads landed. What a way to extract form. It's like mining gold from nothing.
It really is.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
Right now, take that, and let's take a look at this.
Yes, these are beautiful.
Talk about monumentalization. The scaffolding monumentalizes a thing. Well, guess what? So does the vitrine, right? And so he built these vitrines for two everyday objects, cup and saucer, right? So two glass vitrines. One is the traditional museum style vitrine, which is basically a rectilinear box, and boom, you place the object in the box, and you put an object in an acrylic box or a glass box, and guess what? It's got value. It's got authority. You just assigned it a world of,
worth
importance.
And value, yes.
Yeah, right? But then he takes it a step further, and he rebuilds the vitrine almost as if he's breaking apart the contours into basic geometric shapes and reassembling them, so the vitrine almost fits like hand in glove. Love that. Oh my God, love that.
Well, and it's also got this mosaic jewel tone too.
Right.
Which I love. I love the joinery that he's using around it. It's careful, but not too precious, because it's got some jagged edges going to it. But yeah, this is one of his newer works too. This was in 2020.
2020, and it goes to that notion of pixelization, which I believe pixelization in Allan's mind, and I have not had a chance to read Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. I have not done extensive research around the specifics here, so I'm going to go out on a limb. We often talk about pixelization as being problematic, right? When you have an image and it's pixelated and you try and print it, you have a problem because you have low resolution. It's bad. We don't like pixelization. But what pixelization does in this case is it exposes inherent geometries that you might not have been able to see before. A pixelated image, when you get in really close, creates a whole series of new images in that pixelization. So it reveals hidden truths. It reveals hidden things, in this case geometry, and that just opened me up to a whole new understanding. Again, the mundane, the simplistic, boom. Let's just take it and extract from it that thing that you would not normally see.
And he talks about pixelization quite a bit in one of his pieces, in which he's in that chair that's within the wall.
Oh, yes.
He starts talking about the dimensions and pixelation, and as he moves through this process, he gets more and more precise with each exploration of that same topic, but this one right here.
Yeah, they can't see that yet. I'm pulling that up right now.
But this one, he specifically mentioned in terms of that precision and fine-tuning that precision even a little bit more,
right,
to meet those dimensions.
This is a really disorienting photo to look at.
It is.
But is it specifically titled "I Want to Become Architecture"? It's some version of that.
Quick. It's in here. This is a fantastic piece. So, and not only that, you can see the back in his studio, so you get to see what the back of it looks like. I'm getting distracted. Let me just.
63 is saying push the errors, as it were. Yeah, I like that. Exactly. Find what is also not seen, but
this is called Wall. I Want to Become Architecture.
I Want to Become Architecture.
2002.
So it's a little bit difficult to see in this image. Hold on, we gotta see.
I will say, I did see something on this too when he was speaking about this, and he was talking about the install, and that it's got a jagged edge on it that you can't really see here, but it's installed into the wall of a museum, and then they sheetrock over it, so it really becomes part of the wall, and the person can, well, him specifically, because this is a bit of a self-portrait.
Sure.
Becomes submerged with that space.
Right. I'm talking about custom built. That's a chair in architecture that is specifically for him. Right. Now we're kind of jumping the gun here again, because let's look at this for a second. So we can see this from the side you would normally see if it were installed in the wall, and we can also see this from the empty standpoint as well. And it kind of, now you're kind of able to see what's going on, because the interior space is a little bit easier to look at. I don't have the back image because there's another image of the back of it, and you can see that on his website, by the way. But we're jumping the gun just a little bit, and I'm kind of happy about that, because let's look at where this has landed. A recent 2020 piece where this extracted space in a wall.
Well, this one's 2002.
Becomes a chair. 2002.
Yes.
Fine. 2002 works too.
The vitrines were 2020, so it's just
right. Okay. Fine. My mistake there, but it still applies, right? Because now, if we take iteration, we take a process that we make a thing, we study the thing, we make another thing based on what we saw in the first thing, and we keep going, right? And once we've iterated 40 times, 20 times, 5 times, we're in a new place, right? Still utilizing the same visual elements, but now where are we, right? Now, if we go back, I'm going to just go back a little bit here for a second to talk about something. I like this new method of being able to bop between slides like this, but sometimes it just lags a little bit for us.
With his volume of work, it's hard to find things today, because we're like,
I know there's so many pieces.
There's got to be 60 slides in here.
I think so. So here's an earlier piece where the chairs are the windows are the chairs, but you can sort of see how this extrusion process, where the chair's relationship to the wall becomes evident. And there's a number of pieces of Allan's that are like this, where the chair's formal architecture becomes part of the architecture. They merge, they become one and the same. And in a lot of respects, Allan's I Want to Become Architecture and the notion of the chair as a stand-in for a human now have all this beautiful interlocking content that I love. It's like Allan is the chair, is the architecture, therefore Allan is the architecture.
And he's encapsulated within
there it is.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. If we go back to the chair iteration series just for a second and we see it again, here's a chair that's inside of a box shaped like a chair. So in a sense, you kind of have two chairs. and this one chair just beautifully slides out of that space. So again, it's kind of like, it's almost like the box, the chair-like box, is more architectural in that the planes of the chair are sheetrock-like, they're building-like, and the chair goes in. And you can see where his thinking led him here when you start looking at the ways in which chairs and architecture interacted. Boojaz is saying, kind of like Bill Viola, except a photograph and not a video. Kind of like Bill Viola, except a photograph and not a video. Yeah, yeah, okay. I'm down with that. Just in terms of the oddness and uncomfortableness. Yeah, for sure. Viola's like, you know, that's an interesting connection. I kind of like that. It wasn't really evident to me at first, but I can see it. I want to see. Should we move on to? We've been talking about chairs, which are made of wood. We've been talking about. We got a little bit into the glass vitrines.
We got a little bit into the glass
Let's
vitrines.
talk about glass.
We also talked about boxes, like boxing and stuff. But yes, let's talk about glass because he utilizes that quite a bit.
And it's another major architectural material.
I will also say that his materials, he's really very sensual with them. He loves materials. He loves these raw materials too. He loves working with wood. He loves the feel of wood. He likes the vibration of the saw with the wood. He loves the smell of the sawdust.
Who doesn't love the smell of that?
And the spirits. And he said the same stuff with glass. He loves certain things about the glass. So it's a very sensual art making process.
I got it, Boojaz. Yeah, now that we bring the wall and him sitting in the wall, yes. Now I totally got you. Now it's very evident where you're going. So in terms of glass, and I just want to everybody think about that picture of the cup and saucer vitrine and the fragmented vitrine. He does a couple of series around masks, oddly, pandemic masks. And
but he actually did these prior to the pandemic.
He did.
Then he went back and revisited them. And then he's like, wow, these look really different now.
Oh, Am Schmidt is here.
Oh, hey.
Latecomer finally back and whoa, loving these chairs. Yeah, well, it goes way beyond the chairs, Am. So sit back and enjoy this ride. I think you're going to really enjoy this.
Claire Fisher, she's making a 6 Feet Under reference.
Oh, she's talking to Pumpkin Audrey. Okay, good. You guys have your moment.
You guys have your moment.
So he's got a whole series of masks. Now, we have to remember that when we're talking about architecture, and we're talking even about chairs, we can't forget that we're talking about the body, right? And so chair, in terms of its scale, stands as it's a stand-in for the body or the figure in architecture, but the body is still a major part of Allan's work. And so if we think about how the body plays in, and we get into elements of performance, we get into elements of, like, for example, this mask that we're looking at right here, this is a great place to start in the way in which we take, and this is what I wanted to talk about when Scultore mentioned analytical cubism, right? Because now the planes of the face are all sort of broken down and sort of, I'll say pixelated or fractalized and put back together. And it changes the way in which we sort of see him inside of that, right? And it is kind of architectural on a level, especially when glass needs to now do something other than what is rectilinear, right? It creates this interesting space. Like glass, we typically think of glass as, in architecture, maybe as having limitation. And when we see that limitation pushed, we're awestruck by that. So now to see a glass mask, which is one, a little foreboding or a little dangerous, right? But it also kind of now reveals the imperfections in the face like it did. It reveals the geometries in the face.
Well, in this case, it actually changes the identity of the face too, because you do have all those pixelations. You're not looking at this face as something that you wouldn't normally recognize him in this.
No.
But there's so many beautiful elements to this.
Right. Well, okay, that's actually a really great way of putting this, I love that, because what it does is it reveals a hidden beauty in the face that you wouldn't see before. We don't see Allan's face like we would normally see it, and we see something else that's hidden in there that we otherwise couldn't see.
And it does change him into some architectural form.
He becomes architecture.
Or sculpture.
Yeah.
He definitely becomes sculpture in this.
63 is like a little Silence of the Lambs.
Oh dear.
Okay, a little bit.
This is called Glass Mask 2018 is when it was created.
He did a whole bunch of stuff around masks in 2018.
He did, but the funny thing is they weren't necessarily about faces or breathing or anything. It was more about sound.
Yeah.
And creating sound with them.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can see that when you start to look at some of these. So here's some really standard issue kind of shop dust masks. I think they've got an N95 inside of a hardened kind of mesh. And, you know, he sort of goes through a couple of iterative exercises with this where sound was the initial idea.
Sound was part of it. This is called Voicings 2018, Dust Masks and Epoxy Resin. And this is where he made that comment on his website. He said, looking back and seeing new meanings in the age of Corona. These are fantastic.
Ben wants to know if it's done on a program or is it real. These are real, Ben. These are, you know, he's got a really beautiful way of photographing his sculptures. These are mannequins that these are photographed on. So these are physical objects. And so these were revisited. Like he sort of went back to these and thought about them again in the pandemic. And I kind of really like them for that. You know, they sort of tell a whole new story now around that. But again, now we're sort of thinking about the body, right? We're thinking about, you know, where does sound come from? Well, it comes to some degree from your mouth, and he's almost extruding that, right? And he's extruding that. Like I love how in this one, hello, why aren't you working? There we go. In this one, it's sort of extruded in sort of a stereoscopic kind of way. And this one is extruded, I almost think of a mute.
Muffled, yes.
A mute in a trumpet kind of way, right? And this one, you know, there's the bell of a horn. It kind of has a very different sound feel to it. This one almost feels like the voice is thrown, you know, like it's, you know, being
projected somewhere else.
Right.
Yes.
And so on and so forth, right? There's all these different ways in which sound could change as it moves through these spaces. But then put the pandemic in place, that context, and everything is different. All right, the body. Let's talk about the body.
Yes,
Let's talk about glass and the body.
There you go.
These vessels, these things that he's doing with glass.
Yes.
And I love how Allan himself is the performer. What were you going to say?
I was going to say.
You were going to say that?
Yeah.
All right. I think Am Schmidt, nice jugs. I mean,
he made those jugs too. He blows glass.
That's right. He does. And we have a video of that.
I love that. I love the brass faucets on them. It's so fantastic.
I know. There's also this sort of, I don't know if it's silicone rubber that holds them around his neck, but you've got like the union of three beautiful materials here, the brass, the glass, and this other kind of latex, epoxy, silicone, whatever it is. There's a sense, you were saying sensual.
It's very sensual.
And it's really about the combination, right? Because there's nothing really sensual about brass necessarily. Brass is cold.
It's cold. You do want to feel it maybe.
But there's a sensuality to the way in which these things are combined.
Yes.
So, you know, he does this whole thing around wearing these vessels. I've got some really interesting videos that we can look at where he actually just goes out for a walk with these, or I've got another video where he's actually making them. So it's going to take me a second to maybe line this up. So you'll have to bear with me. But let's see what we've got. I have, not that one, it is this one. Let's pop over there and have a look. Now, this is going to be a little out of whack for us, so, you know, bear with me. I'll get it to work, don't worry. Let's see, we're going to move that into place. Let's give this a play. You're not missing any voice, so don't worry. So those forms that are being put into water that you saw just a minute ago are the molds. That's a mold right there. And they split apart. And the molten glass on the end of the pipe gets put into the mold. And you can't see this, but there's someone at the end of that pipe blowing into it. And the glass is actually expanding into the mold. Notice the pixelization again, right? We're now seeing that fragmentation realized in the glass through a similar process in the mold. Like, look closely, not at this mold, but if we go back just for a second, I want to go back to right here.
Even the process
See
of
that
making,
mold? That mold has that same pixelization that the mask had.
It does.
Right?
The process of making is definitely performance in itself. These flashes of fire and all of
God,
that.
yeah.
It's so gorgeous.
It's really a beautiful process. Glass blowing is one of the most beautiful processes in the art world. And, you know, when we were at RISD, there's a glass blowing major there. And they offer one course in winter session in glass blowing. And every single person in that school tries to take that course. And no one can get into it because it's full. And it drives everybody crazy. Glenn actually, I hate username 67, got to take that course. And it was always kind of a, you know.
Yeah, that video is Blow Molding Emanation 2019, Allan Wexler, Wheaton Arts Center. You took it off before I could finish reading it to cite it, so.
There it is.
There it is. The video was by Marcus Nelson. Very nice video.
Yeah, that's a beautiful video. Really gorgeous. So I just want to show like a performance with, you know, it's a very brief performance with the some of the glasses that he has. And again, because I have different video sources coming in here, we're a little bit wonky.
This is from Allan Wexler's Vimeo. So he has an account as well, and he puts up some of his performance pieces when he creates things. So that's an awesome place to check out and see his work in progress.
And I'll put his Instagram up on the screen right after we watch this, but that's another great place to go to actually see his work. But take a look at this one. Yeah. I mean, if we just stop for a minute to think about like what's going on there, right? I mean, these beautiful vessels that we're supposed to treat with care.
You're such an inspiration.
But he's
You remind me to be happy.
I love that you don't let it get you down.
Good for you.
It breaks my heart.
Look at you out and about.
You push us all to do better.
You are superheroes.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. We went to an ad on the video, which is frustrating. But there's a domestication to what's happening in that he's wearing it like a skirt. And when he comes out, you sort of feel this moment where you're like, oh, you know,
it's a fragile moment.
It's a fragile moment.
Yeah.
So, okay. Let's jump over. Let's see. Oh my God, it's 9:17.
He's someone we can talk about for a very long time. There's so many pieces. We're barely going to scratch the surface of him.
I mean,
right?
we can go on and on. There's so many
Yeah.
beautiful pieces that
So
he's
many
made
gorgeous
as
pieces.
wearables that contribute to these other performative acts. So, you know, there's this device that aids in listening. There is another one that I had shown you earlier. This one actually, Cones of Vision, is really quite a beautiful one. And I have a video of this that we can look at really quickly. Take a look at this piece. I think you're going to like this.
What I would like to see on those, though, I'd like to see what he's seeing through there.
Well, yeah, because there is this, I love the way the interiors of the cones are painted black. Number one.
Yes.
But I mean, if we just take apart what he's doing for a second, he's taking the simple act of seeing, right? And he is applying a sort of an architecture to the the elements.
Peripheral vision almost.
Great,
Yes,
yeah. Peripheral vision's actually great, and then he kind of takes this rule set that relates definitely to architecture, to craft, to building, to apparatus, and placing it on himself. And there's an absurdity to it, right? But there's also this kind of weird, he wears it very seriously, as if this is an act in everyday existence. There's a weird kind of conformity to it,
There
right?
is.
Which I really quite like. It's almost as if this is a normal thing.
Well, just as an aside, I feel like there's like a little homage to Victorian art in some of these pieces, because we're seeing the vitrine, and they did remind me of the older Victorian vitrines. We're seeing that last piece. Some of these are very steampunk kind of looking, so they have this almost timeless nature. They harken back to another time, and it's being reinvented, just like he keeps revisiting his art pieces. It's almost like we're looking at just like a little hint or a little softness to another era.
Well, there's science in there, right? In the Victorian era, the vitrine especially, right? The Victorian vitrine, the Wardian case, was invented really not as a decorative object. It was invented because there was a doctor, he was a botanist, he was a naturalist. He was having trouble getting his specimens shipped to him in such a way that he could actually study them, right? And so he developed this vitrine, basically a small miniature greenhouse that his pieces could be shipped to him in, so they would survive. And they were beautiful because they needed to be well crafted, and they looked like a mini greenhouse. So in that time, that kind of element came into being out of a need in science, but then became a decorative aspect of interior decorating.
Oh, wow.
Right? But you're right, there is a sort of aspect of that in this. These things arise out of what we think is a need when we see Allan performing in them, right? Like this is obviously an aid for hearing. There's and then there's of course this one as well. And these objects are, there's an absurdity to them, but there's a beauty to them, and that's
yes.
there was something I had written. I'm looking in my notes here about that.
Even the variation in the same material that he's using, like the fine paper thin, almost wood, and how it is compared to like the harder wood in the background, and the pine here. I think I'm not great with discerning wood types, but there's different elements and different gauges of wood. There's different types of wood. There's different
well, that combination of
strength.
materials and the way in which he's crafting this, number one, it sort of harkens back to the architectural model, right? Architectural models are absolutely beautiful things that I think are falling out of, I won't say fashion, but I don't see them as much as I used to. And one of the things that fascinated me about architectural models was the variety of materials that would be used to sort of create a physical rendering of a thing before it was built, because there's a tangibility that's very easy to see. And the thing I wrote about these pieces was, I'm looking at my notes now just to kind of remind myself, but I said a beauty in simple utility, right? And this is a utility object, an object of utility that is really just about hearing. And what it does is it sort of
amplify the sound.
Right, but it also it sort of illustrates how the sound functions, right? And so now, one of the things that his chairs do through those iterations is it calls attention to the function of the chair. And in this, he's calling attention to the function of hearing by trying to enhance hearing. And so what this does is it not only, we chuckle a little bit at the performance because there's an absurdity to it, but then we say, oh my God, look at how beautiful that is in showing us how sound is channeled into the ears. And look at the way in which his construction, his craft sort of lends illustration or lends visuality to that simple thing we never think about. And it's like the vitrines that hold the cup and saucer, right? And how those fractalizations of that space show us a geometry within those things we never would think about. This shows us the functionality of hearing that we might not ever think about. And so he reveals that for us in this. Architecture is a way of altering and revealing space that we maybe take for granted, but it shows us something new. It shows us something we hadn't seen before. That space was there. Look, first of all, inside of this bar, Teeny's bar, right? This physical space has always existed.
Oh, yeah.
But it was redefined by what was put around it, right?
Right.
And that space was made different by what was put around it. It changed the way in which human beings interacted with the space by what was put around it. And that's what Wexler's doing in this work, is he is changing the ways in which we see and deal with things we interact with on a daily basis and bringing light and beauty to those things. An architect does this, but he does it in a functional building.
Yes.
Allan's doing this with everything else that has a mundanity to it. I like how I realize these things as we're going. I'm on my tear now.
That's why I don't like to talk about these things before we do the show too.
I know.
Because I love organic conversation. That's, he's really thrilling to me. I don't want to talk about him before we get here.
Well, we did that too because we were sharing a few notes the other
We
day.
were trying to figure out which images and stuff, but
and you were like, "Let's stop talking right now."
Let's stop talking. Yes.
Well, I think that first of all, I always walk away from a show like this wondering if I did any justice to the work. And this is not a cue for you to type in the chat that yes, I did. That's not what I'm looking for
Great
here.
show tonight.
Great show tonight. We all have to go. No. Hold up. What I think needs to be done in certain situations with certain artists that we cover is we have to have more than one show about them.
Yes.
We barely scratched the surface.
We barely scratched. We showed you a couple of his pieces. There's exponentially more. So you have to go check out that website again, Allan Wexler.
63 is like, hey, it was a great discussion. Thanks. Right. That's not what I was looking for, 63, but thank you. I appreciate that. You can also hit his Instagram, which I said I'd put up there. It's at Allan Wexler Studio on Instagram. So you definitely want to go check that out. But maybe we should ask Allan to come on.
Yeah.
I would love to chat with him.
I would love to talk to him.
Well, I would love to just hear him talk.
Yes.
I mean, I believe it or not, I won't say much that day.
You're not going to be able to control yourself around him. You've got so many questions and so many things to say to him. I don't believe that for a second.
Well, I will say this: if he comes on, I will buy a new, because my current one is really nasty. My current RISD sweatshirt is pretty nasty. I'll buy a new RISD sweatshirt and I'll wear that on the show. Sculptori, it's hard to capture a career like his.
It really.
Allan rules. Absolutely. I mean,
he's an artist's artist.
Well, yeah, I think he's more than that. I think that he's the type of person that he's the type of artist that most people can come to and get something from. And we've seen this before. We've done artists on this show where we know that we have to present them in a way to our audience that says, okay, look, here's why we think this is good. Here's what you should look for. But with Allan, you don't have to do that. And that doesn't necessarily make him better than anyone else. But what it does do is it gives his audience a little bit of a wider, appeal. Breadth.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Breadth. Mom says, what an interesting artist. Mom's ready to go. Many facets to him. This is like her light departure.
So many facets to him.
Stop pouring those 5%ers. Well, we needed something to close with. We have to have our toast with some. I'm just prepping for that. So,
I will say, like, I watched this one video and my handwriting is so bad I can't remember the name.
You can't read your own writing?
So maybe I'll post it on Facebook or one of our social media accounts. But he had so many great quotes in that, and I was writing and I'm like, I'm going to stop writing and just listen because I'm getting away from it. But one thing that made me really sad about Allan Wexler was he was talking about his studio and all the stuff that was in it, like all of his art pieces. And he's like, I don't really want to leave behind all this stuff for my daughters to figure out. And I'm like, oh no, you can pass it to us, and we'll take on all of your artwork. Don't worry about that. You just have your daughters give us a phone call, and we'll be right over there. So that made me really sad. I'm like, you don't understand. You don't have to worry about that. I could totally see this being a studio to visit for generations to come. And even he was wearing a sweatshirt. It was paint splattered because he was in his studio and he was being authentic and real. He reminded me of, Ellsworth Kelly in his studio, how he'd go to the studio every day and put on his uniform because he called it his uniform. And I loved seeing his studio. I'm going to put the video up so that you can all watch it. It's about 45 minutes. It's
we'll link to that. We'll put it up on our socials.
So a lot of great inspiration and thoughts in that.
I managed to find one of the images of some of the scaffolding furniture that's here, just so you can kind of see it. I'm just scrolling through some things as we're sort of saying, as we're winding down here. But definitely get over to his website and check that out. Definitely follow him on Instagram. And absolutely, I'm telling you right now, get this book, Absurd Thinking Between Art and Design. Okay, go look it up on Amazon. Go pick it up. It is beautiful. It's Lars Muller Publishers. Great book. And I think, is that going to do it for us? Do we have anything to close with? Like, do we have like unfinished business?
I don't think so. No.
All right. Well, we had a great turnout tonight. We loved seeing all of you. Remember, if you're here and you have not followed, press the follow button, for crying out loud. Am Schmidt, I did see what you said there, that you were thankful that we were still streaming when you came on. I'm sorry I didn't comment on that, but thank you for that. That's really nice. It's nice to see you too.
Yes.
Nice to see all of you tonight. We really appreciate that. I didn't look to see who we have on for next week. We normally announce that.
Oh.
Do you know? Oh, shit.
Do you remember?
I do now. Okay. We haven't told her we're doing her.
Oh, we haven't, have we?
I highly doubt she's watching right now, but I
That's
know for a
okay.
fact there's like 3 people on here that know her very well.
Oh, yeah?
Next week, we are doing the work of Barbara Friedman on the show. So, Jim, don't tell her, okay? I kind of need to tell her that we're going to have a show about her before. It doesn't matter. All right.
It doesn't matter.
All right, let's close.
Yes, let's close. To Allan Wexler.
To Allan Wexler and to all of you, we thank you so much for watching. You guys are seriously the best. We're coming up. Remember, our year anniversary is coming up. We're going to have a special show planned for that, okay?
Maybe a giveaway.
Oh, we'll definitely have a giveaway.
Yeah.
Oh my God, speaking of giveaways, real quick, before you go, real quick.
Woo, Christmas time.
Okay, so in the
holiday time.
Holiday time.
Okay.
I have a painting that was given to me 3 years ago. It is one of the worst paintings you've ever seen.
Awful.
But it's very strange, and it is called The Regifter. And on the back is a series of signatures, right? And the job of this painting is to be regifted. And when you regift it, you sign it over to the next people. Well, I have this painting, and I'm gonna regift it to one of you in December. And you're actually gonna we're gonna sign the backs of it.
Cool.
And then it's gonna be your job inside of a year to 3 years to regift it again.
Maybe
we can make it part of this show. But as the fall rolls on, we're going to show you this absolutely horrific painting. I kind of think it's
I've grown attached to it because we've had it for 3 years.
It's time to let it go.
It is time to let it go.
But that's going to actually, everybody's like, nice, I want it. Yeah,
yes.
you got to see it. You're going to love it.
See it.
But we'll work that out.
We will.
And now it is time for us to leave.
Yes.
Here's to all of you. We'll see you next week with Barbara Friedman. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.